Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order. Calling to the Redwoods. This is our regular meeting for Tuesday, April 4th, 2023, which includes the Union flag salute honor of those serving our country.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I'd like to read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered today is unceded territory of the Wiyot people who continue to live and thrive on this land today. It is surrounded by the traditional, ancestral, and present homeland of several indigenous nations, including the Huba, Karuk, Natole, Tolowa, Wailaki, and Huron, that make up Humboldt County and Del Norte County. Now we'll go to general public comments.
There were none.
And next, board member comments. Let's be darned.
I didn't know if everybody had heard the former trustee Barbara Rice was just appointed to the board of trustees for Mendocino College.
Okay, the Mallory.
Yes, I was able to listen into a webinar recently.
Thank you.
I listened into a webinar recently, did somewhere on advocacy, and it was one of the better ones, frankly, that I listened into. A couple of things surprised me. They did a lot with Biden's proposal. Then they did a lot with advocacy, or shitty advocacy, far more well about this than I am. What really struck me was some of the conversation regarding housing, and also the recommendations to move funds that have been set aside for deferred maintenance to enrollment. In terms of housing, what apparently is being recommended is that the CSU and the UC should have priority over new housing for students. And maybe that's been discussed before, but it really did surprise me that any housing funds that the legislature may pass should focus on the CSU and UCs rather than community colleges. The other thing that I found interesting is that the state tax board has extended the tax deadlines until October. In most counties, because of storms that we suffered, many of us suffered in December, and the earthquake, I guess, as well. And what's relevant about that is that's going to delay the funding that the state anticipated until the fall, and that could have an impact on the native lives. So that surprised me as well. But in any event, it was a very good presentation, and I appreciated that webinar was made available to us. Thank you.
Any other board member comments?
I would just comment that I attended the same webinar and was obviously the same information, and the issue about the student housing was interesting on a couple of fronts, and one term that I heard when they were talking about preference for UC and CSU systems was that was destination housing.
Yeah.
Meaning I'm sure that now students are moving in from out of the area and need housing now. That's also can be true for community college students, but that the focus on community college level regarding the renewed interest in providing housing for community college students had to do with the fact that overall, approximately 20% of community college students are homeless. And so one is providing a kind of housing for students moving and relocating. Another is providing housing for largely local students who don't have any housing at all. And I thought that was interesting, and also that the legislative analyst was recommending not putting any money towards housing at the moment, which the legislature does not have to follow that advice, and the legislature was still in favor of money for student housing, but the balance there was not determined.
Any other comments? Well, I'll report that I attended the same webinar. That was the government relations webinar that the league puts on the third Thursday or Tuesday, excuse me, of every month at 11 o'clock. And it was neat to see the trustees participate, and I appreciated that. And I wanted to also mention that on the first Wednesdays, and that will be tomorrow, the Chancellor's Office does their monthly webinar. And I kind of just plug those things onto my calendar so that I'm reminded to check it out. And they're always helpful too. The last webinar attended was really a Zoom meeting related to the Women's Caucus. And that would be my comment for the month. Okay, we'll move down to the board committee reports. Trustee Dorn.
I'm going down. First. Thank you, Trustee Joy. I want to report on behalf of the President's Evaluation Committee, the ad hoc President Evaluation Committee. Members of that are trustees Matthews, Biggin, and myself on facilitating the group. We are following policy associated with the President's evaluation. It's a very important responsibility of the Board of Trustees. According to policy, the committee develops a survey instrument and a distribution of that survey instrument. The committee this year developed 2 survey instruments, one for the trustees, which will focus on the goals that the trustees have created for the president in collaboration with the president at our retreat in the summer. The second survey instrument, which will be new this year, is designed for constituent groups. The reason that we came up with the second survey instrument is because last year we only had 3 responses from the constituent group, and we think it might be because we used the same survey instrument as we did for trustees. And even with the 3 respondents that we had, there were a lot of don't know, and it's not my area of expertise, which I certainly could understand. So the second survey instrument deals primarily with characteristics such as communication style, leadership style, interactions between the president and various members of the staff. And we derived this survey instrument from a survey that had been developed by ACCT. It's one of our national community college organizations. So it is a survey that has been vetted, and it's well done. We did not use the entire survey because we wanted to keep it a reasonable length. So rather than asking constituents 60 or 75 questions, it was kind of ridiculous. We ended up with 20 some questions, which we are hoping will elicit response from our constituents. The distribution will be the same distribution as last year, which includes the director of the president of CSEA, president of CRFO, the president of Management Council, president of, there's another group that the Academic Senate. And we also added deans and directors to the list of constituents who will be responding, as well as the president's cabinet. We certainly wanted to solicit, or elicit, I should say, responses from those who are directly reporting to the president. According to policy, we met with the president and discussed the 2 survey instruments and our list of constituents to whom we will be sending the survey. President Langler was in agreement that these were both, solid, good, valid as survey instrument can be. And we agreed that, we should move forward with it and the constituents, who we have added to our list. According to procedure, of course, we have a procedure for this policy, the survey instruments will go out this month, the month of April. And they will be returned hopefully in the month of April. They will be going out, I'll have to discuss with Julie, she's going to be the brains behind this operation, thank goodness. They'll be going out, I'd like to think probably early this week, we'll have a 2-week turnaround time. And then we will, ask Julie to summarize the results. These surveys are confidential, and we want to stress that, especially for the constituents who, may be concerned about the confidentiality of survey instrument that is essentially praising the president's performance. So the only individuals who will be seeing the responses, anonymous responses, will be the trustees and President Farina. We are going to request, as we already said, a 2-week turnaround time so that Julie has the last 2 weeks in April to summarize the results. And then, according to procedure, we will be discussing these results in closed session in May. That's it. Thank you. And I'm looking at my 2 trustee colleagues. Did I miss anything?
The comment I wanted to make is there will be a comment box under a number of questions and sections. And we really want to encourage those who are taking the survey to make comments. Those are always very valuable to us. So please take the time to write comments of, praise and of recommendations and suggestions, whatever you feel is appropriate related to that question connected to the comment box. And now we have, let's see, Dawn.
Hi, the Board Eval Committee has also been met, and that committee is Trustee Robertson and Trustee Petroni. We met and we had a list of questions from ACCT as well, and we duped it out. It was quite the fight to get it under 100 questions. 20 questions was nothing. And, but we did put it together, and we're pretty excited about the survey. It touches on a lot of things we haven't done in the past. And questions that are provocative, so to speak. And we did do a scale, and we do have open-ended questions at the end. Our survey will be going out 2 days after the President Eval survey comes back, and we'll also have a 2-week turnaround period for it. So please take your time and enjoy the survey. Then the audit committee met before the board meeting, and that is comprised of Trustee Matthews and Trustee Mullery. And we went over the financing for the first COP financing and 7.5 million. And we do have a recommendation from the board. So we went over, there's several types of sales that we talked about at the last meeting. The audit committee has recommended a negotiated sale, and we are also recommending a target of a 30-year term. But as we talk to our consultants, it could go any lesser, well, it won't go more, but it could go lesser depending upon the interest rate. The negotiated sale had a much better interest rate. The costs were a lot less. We actually learned a whole lot about bond insurance and surety insurance. Thank God we have Vice President Morrison to help us out and to calculate this all out. It was a lively conversation with the attorney as well. And one thing I did want to mention, Trustee Kelly, at the last board meeting, you were asking about the insurance. And I did confirm with the attorney that it's the exact same insurance we have today. There's no, in terms of liability and fire, there is all bond insurance in addition, but just for the liability and fire on the building, it's the same amount of insurance. And he did confirm that if Marty sells one of the names of the building You're right, I got one for that. Receives a large donation to have somebody's name put on the building. We can rename the building while it is still collateral. And then, in May, there'll be staff. We got a little overwhelmed with the little details, which isn't really our job. And so, we're recommending that the staff create the resolution with all the defined terms. The audit committee will look at it a week before the board meeting, just to see if we have any further questions. And otherwise, the entire board will be presented at the May meeting with the resolution. And just a quick note of the 7.5, 3 million of it is tentatively allocated for the student housing design phase. We did not talk about anything to do with the 28 million loan that's going to come from somewhere for the student housing. From my fellow trustees, any?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Can you record that?
Any other committees that met this month? All right, we'll move on to agenda item 2.4, status of board of trustee request. Are there any questions about that summary? Seeing none, we'll move down to the annual review of the mission statement. How would the group like to proceed on this review?
I'm sorry, what?
How would you like to proceed on this review?
Is it an action item?
Is discussion? Yes.
I just have two comments, and one is that I think it does, but I wanted everybody else to perhaps weigh in. That with the wind farm coming up, which is going to change, Humboldt County potentially, does our mission statement grasp what the college needs to do to help facilitate students meet those job needs?
Yes, trustee Matthews.
Well, when I read the line regarding serving to be nimble and pioneering partner in the educational, civic, cultural, and economic development of the region.
Okay.
I think so.
And an excellent point, trustee Jordan, but I do agree with trustee Matthews that much of the language that we have could address that, and I would be reluctant to revise the mission statement to make it specific to a particular industry. So I think we have it covered. But I think it's
I don't disagree, I just was
Yeah.
throwing it out there as
Yeah.
a thought and to start the discussion.
Yeah, trustee.
Did you have an idea of how you might want to revise or?
No, I mean, I think it did, but I just thought with this coming on the horizon, and there's so much news about it, that I just want to make sure that the college is in our mindset or in our, which is our mission statement, we are ready for it. And so that's why I threw it out.
And I agree that I do think that as it stands right now, it does address that opportunity in technology.
I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, and the other line I see in this mission statement towards the end, we are dedicated to a just and sustainable world. And certainly that project is pointing towards sustainability. Yes, trustee Matthews.
I would just comment, in reading it, thoughtfully, I think it's really a very positive and very powerful statement. And I don't see a need to revise it, but I just would like to comment that I think it's very good.
I believe we updated this last year, am I correct? So, but we have made a commitment to review it on an annual basis. We're moving on to 2.6, excuse me, review of the board of trustee goals. They're pulled up on the screen now. Do we have any questions about any of those goals? Yes, trustee Dorn.
I had a question, one was 2B. And I don't feel like I've really been involved or doing that. And maybe that's just me.
That's related to monitoring and supporting employee
Yeah.
recruiting efforts.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we need to request a board report at some point to, help us understand, more about how.
But like I said, is it
How
just
we
me
can
or does
support.
everybody else feel like we're?
No, I had the same, I had the same feeling. I wasn't sure how I'm monitoring it, other than receiving board reports on a regular basis. But then how do you define regular? Yes, please.
I just want the board to remember that your role is policy and procedure
Right.
and not get into the weeds on how we recruit, but just all the things that surround it.
So why, and that was my second point, why is it why is it a board goal if we really shouldn't be doing that?
Trustee Robinson.
I think when we review and revise policy, especially the administrative policies, I think that's our opportunity.
And to think about it in the context of recruiting and diversity in particular. And also, doesn't the board give a review of like EEO activity plan stuff? Yeah, I think Robert.
That's a good point. That's another opportunity for us to support and monitor. Any other goals that came to your attention that you feel that we haven't been addressing in the last quarter? We agreed to review these goals on a quarterly basis. And certainly with our board evaluation coming up next month, these are the areas that we're going to be evaluating ourselves on. Trustee Matthews?
Well, and these were 2-year goals for this year, so in our August retreat, we will be rewriting our goals for the coming 2 years, correct?
Correct.
The other one I thought was the last 11, the monitoring and supporting the progress of the foundation and meeting its goals. And I don't, have we looked at the goals? Or,
Question. Oh, trustee Meyer.
Well, of course, as you well know, because you are a member, we do have two trustees
Right.
on the foundation board. And of course, we have the report at all our meetings from Executive Director Coelho. It seems to me at some point we may have seen goals. You certainly have seen goals as a member of the foundation board.
I wasn't there at the first meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I would,
Yeah.
if I may ask Executive Director Coelho a question. Are you comfortable with it?
Well, I'm just saying, I feel like I'm aware of the goals of the foundation. Serving that capacity, but maybe, that particular role that we fill, it's never been our tradition to report out during board committee reports. Maybe as board members, we need to do a better job of reporting on under member comments or board committee reports about that. I also don't tell this board about all the REDAC meetings I go to as a representative. I thought you all didn't want to hear them.
Okay. Trustee Matthews?
I just, I think in our monthly reports from Director Coelho that we basically hear an updated progress report on everything that's happening. So I feel that we know that. Now, if there's a list of goals that we feel like we don't have in front of us, we can remedy that. But I certainly think that we, are meeting that goal in terms of monitoring, that is being aware of and knowing what's happening with the foundation.
I agree, that's an incredible job, you know, in meetings, but like, we're looking at a list of board goals. I don't believe I've seen the same format for the foundation, and in our, and in the board goals, we talk about the foundation meeting its goals. So that was my.
President, did you have a comment?
I do. It may be helpful for the board to request at the end of the meeting, a report based, to ask me to bring to the board just the summary of what the foundation's goals have been and the status and the actions to achieve those goals with a one spreadsheet at glance, and you can take a look at how well the foundation's doing.
Like we're doing right now.
Correct.
And the other comment I wanted to make about this goal is that it was never our intent to have to approve the goals, but to give them the autonomy to create their own goals, but that we want to be supportive of their goals and support them and not micromanage them in any way, shape, or form.
That wasn't.
I know it wasn't, but I just wanted to put that on record. Okay, and I think we're ready. And move back to the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that any trustee would like to pull?
I move approval.
Well, sorry, I want to pull
Sorry.
3.1. I'm asking to pull 3.1. So now I'm ready for a motion.
I move approval of 3.2 through 3.7.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, I would like to go back to 3.1. Reason I asked to remove it is because I believe the board did take action after closed session. And I did report out that we had passed a resolution. It was numbered 796, and it was related to employee dismissal and discipline. So that needs to be added back into the official minutes. Now I'm ready for a motion.
I move to approve with the amendment.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes. Now we are ready for 4.1, approved monthly financial status report.
I need a second before we.
Yeah, I would like to.
I move that we approve the monthly financial status report.
A second.
Okay, now I call for discussion. Is there any questions? Vice President Morrison, do you have any comments?
This is to some extent in the background, but just to point out that this does reflect the salary and benefit increases, or it does include the salary and benefit increases that should reflect the impacts from the CRPO contract that was approved last meeting, and that we will see an uptick in the salary and benefit actuals come the report that includes April information. That is when the retroactive payments should be made to faculty, as well as that's the one that the overload gets paid out. But all in all, factoring all that in, we're still looking at 19.9% income balance for this year for the unrestricted general fund. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Next item, first read of board policies and administrative procedures. I guess we could take each section one at a time. The first section relates to the 5,000 minimal changes. Are there any questions about those changes? My understanding is the red is what has been struck out and the green is what has been added in.
Correct.
Thank you for those additions to these policies. It makes it much easier to read through. Okay, seeing none, we'll go back to the 5,000 no changes. Any questions about any of those policies? The first one is student services. Student accident insurance, I just those two. And the one question that came to my mind is, do we have a student health center?
Yes, we do. It's located in the Eaton complex.
Okay, I heard some discussion about legislation related to additional items that needed to be added to students to health centers, and a concern that the league has is there are community colleges that don't have a health center. It would be difficult for them to meet those obligations if that was passed. So thank you for that update. Let's go to the next section of the administrative procedures for 5,000 that have substantial changes. Any questions about those policies? First one's on student records, directory information and privacy. Then we scroll down to voter registration. Then I would guess it's just those two.
I make a quick comment, please.
Yeah.
On 5040, if you will notice that we misspelled the word the, so we will make that correction. I forgot which page and paragraph, but also you'll notice that in some of the paragraphs, we have a 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, and we shouldn't really have, we're going to strike all the 1.0s and just have it a more consistent format.
So I did have a question on 5610. In the big green box, there were two references: districts that operated an automatic class registration system on or before January 1, and then the second paragraph is districts that did not operate one. Did we operate one in on or before January 1, 2008? And if not, I thought maybe we could just remove that because it doesn't apply to us. I wasn't sure why we needed both paragraphs in there, since this is a policy just for our district personally.
Once you have any comment in this particular one, I know it went through the attorneys.
Mhm.
This came back as a lead recommendation to have the paragraphs in, I defer to the wisdom of the board.
I know that when I've used those templates before, they haven't minded if we wanted to kind of massage them, and I just thought maybe some of that information didn't pertain to our district, so it wasn't necessary, but if the group thinks that we should keep paragraphs in, that's fine. I just thought maybe we could remove one.
And then this is an AP 5610, so the board would recommend to me that to strike one paragraph and keep the other, I suppose. So it's up to the board, what's the board would like the administration.
I don't care either way.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I just would think that for flexibility, if the college moving forward chooses one system or the other at a given time, that it might be helpful to have both paragraphs as recommended by the league, to just keep them in there, because our systems might change more quickly than our policies might quickly catch up.
Nothing can change.
And also it's helpful information if someone had a question, they could see that there were two options there. And that reminds me, I think I skipped when we were on the minimal changes for AP 5,000. 5410. That was, scrolling down. Is it ASCR or ASCE?
ASCR.
Yes, they are.
Okay, and I can't find it. It looked like it said, on my copy, it looked like it said ASCE.
I think you're correct, that's a good catch, thank you.
But I can't find it on my tiny little laptop.
Yeah, it's in that last sentence.
Oh, okay. Okay,
We'll make that change.
okay, I thought it meant ASCR.
Good.
Okay. Is Trustee Matthews?
Going back to AP 5610 on the voter registration issue, I actually think that having the first paragraph in there is really good for context, even though it's the option that doesn't apply to us. But it does give you a sense of why the option is being given to schools with voter automatic registration after 2008, and the fact that in fact, you know, it's required for some, I think that's a good context.
Thank you for that comment. Okay, then we're down to BP 5000s, minimals. Anyone have any questions about those minimal changes? Then we'll go to BPs, no changes. And the last section, the BP 5040 substantial. Any questions about that? Yeah, Trustee Mann.
I just wanted to say I really appreciate this option for supporting students who have a chosen name. And I noticed there were some instances where like he, she has been changed to he, she, they. It's a little more inclusive in pronouns. I just really want to voice support for that from the student body. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment. This item is information and will come back to us next month for a second read. All right, down to or point 3, second read of the board policies and administrative procedures. We went through these in more detail last month. Are there any comments? Trustee Kelly?
Do we need a motion on the table for discussion? So move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, now discussion then. Hey,
So BP 2015, I know we've stricken the language on the.
is that one of the ones that's revised?
Oh,
So
yeah,
which one can we pull up?
it'd be,
Was it one with a revision?
yeah,
Okay,
the 2000s revised. We've stricken from the language a recommendation that the board president seeks the student trustee's point of view. I don't want to remove that recommendation on reflection. I'd like to keep it in there. It's not requiring anyone to do it. And I know we've gone round and round about it. I know that at the state level, all the community colleges are talking about ways to support student trustee voices. You know, our mission, our vision is all around student success, and I think it's a good thing for, you know, new incoming presidents of the board to think about those things as well. So I think leaving it in the language of the policy is useful.
any comments?
Yes, trustee Matthews?
I think absolutely that we should be seeking the opinion of our student trustee. I'm not aware of, I believe that we've been quite open and supportive of that. The line that we took out stated that we should ask for the student trustee's opinion before any other trustees in the discussion. And personally, I think it should be up to the trustee when they want to speak, if they, want to have something to say before anybody else, if they want to kind of wait and join in the conversation, not repeat. I just think we don't need to require that we ask the student trustee first. If the student trustee's hand is up first, she's going to, or he is going to speak first. And I truly believe that we have supported, asked for, and truly appreciated our student trustees' input.
Trustee Matson.
I feel very welcome, so for the year that I've served, I do agree with you, I appreciate it, I don't know any context for any other year. I would like to suggest that, I don't know that the student trustee needs to lead. I know there are some colleges where like the student trustee casts their vote first, the advisory vote is cast first, and then the other members. I have, I've yet to dissent, so I just consider my vote along with everyone else. It makes sense to me, so that you wouldn't be putting someone on the spot that might not want to. But I think that we do have an advisory vote for the student trustees. I wonder if non-voting could be changed to advisory vote, and then this would be another policy where maybe could we update the pronouns from he, she to he, she, they. I would appreciate that.
Thank you, that's an excellent point.
Sorry, I didn't catch that on first read.
What?
For example, in that second paragraph, he, she shall report to the associate students would be he, she, they. That's an example. Yes. Yeah.
I would like to suggest that we just shift the pronoun to they.
Oh. Any comment? Valerie?
I certainly am aware that that is a trend to use a plural pronoun. I think in this context, frankly, it could be a little confusing in that someone might read it and not recognize what the board is trying to do to be inclusive, but read it as if we have more than one student trustee. So I'm a little reluctant to just simply say they shall. I can't read, I can't get it on the computer either, but you know what I'm saying. And just stick with he, she, they. But I can go with either way, but that's my read of it, that it could be somewhat confusing to someone who might not be informed that they is also used in the singular.
Trustee Matthews?
So on the question of the student trustees advisory vote, this is the second bullet in towards the bottom there. Okay, so it says, does have the authority to make and second motions and may cast an advisory vote. I read that as it is up to the discretion of the student trustee whether they want to cast an advisory vote on a certain thing or not. So you were wanting it to say shall?
I was reading the first line that says the board shall include one non-voting student trustee, and I missed that there is an entire bullet point at the bottom that does include the explanation that there is.
So we're good.
advisory vote.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We've had one minor modification. Do we need to amend the motion or not?
I didn't want to completely shut down trustee Robinson's recommendation. I was just offering an opinion, so I don't know if others would like to speak on how they would like to proceed on that. I can certainly go either way. I was just offering an opinion.
Trustee Matthews?
I would second trustee Molly's comment and for clarification in. But I think we should include they.
Trustee Robinson, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. So I recall last year when we revised the policies, we did shift from he, she to they. And so just for consistency purposes, I was thinking it would make sense here, but I'm okay with just adding they.
Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say that I agree with, Colleen. That not just having they.
I was gonna concur that I agree that, it could be construed as having more than one student trustee in this context, so for the specific policy, it would be wise to keep each there.
Okay, I'm on. Oh, trustee.
I just want to go back to the first comment, which is what I was thinking about was the first line. That is a non-voting student trustee, but then we're saying later on in the policy, they're casting an advisory vote. So should that line say the board shall include an advisory voting, whatever the word trustee, student trustee? Because they actually aren't a non-voting. They're.
Trustee Kelly, were you?
I was just gonna say it's complicated by the fact that we put this whole, the board president shall annually at their discretion kind of thing, or, on or before, no, that the whole board decides on these privileges each year. We have to take that stuff at the top and basically maybe strike that person's, well, the non-voting part of it. And just the voting part gets described down here in the section of the rights and responsibilities down at the bottom. So board shall include one student trustee. The term of office shall be 1 year commencing May 15th, on and on and on, and let the bottom speak for itself.
Trustee Matthews.
I was just going to comment, excuse me, that I think that this follows a template in terms of all of the things about that, and probably that template does say non-voting. I don't see a contradiction between stating this is a non-voting trustee in any official sense, but that we definitely have advisory voting. However, I'm not opposed to taking the first line out. I think it's probably part of the template that's trying to make clear what.
I don't think he's suggesting we take the first line out, just taking the not that one word out, non-voting.
Okay, well, okay,
That's
right,
what I hear.
yes.
So if we agree with that, are we ready for vote? No, trustee Dorn?
Now that we're getting into the weeds of this, so they have to be a resident of California? So that means that any foreign, okay, and that's by ed code?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'm just curious.
They have to support the Constitution, you know, they get sworn in.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, okay, let's, I'm going to call for a question. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstain, I think this passes. Now we move on to 5.1.
That was with the amended language on the first line, right? Okay.
Okay, so just so that you have this clear, so all the VP and APs that approved, except for this one you want to approve was a non-voting removed, correct? I'm sorry? And the gotcha, okay. Thank you.
Okay, 5.1, strategic enrollment management project.
And this is Dr. Morse and her team.
So my team will gladly and happily make their way to the podium to share an update of our strategic enrollment management project for academic year 22-23.
Thank you so, oh, are we on or not? Thank you so much for having us today. We are so excited to be able to share a little on our strategic enrollment management project with the board.
Oh, I've got it.
A little bit of background on strategic enrollment management. This is a statewide community of practice that is sponsored by the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office and facilitated through the Institutional Effectiveness Partnership Initiatives, or IEPI. And so every year there's an invitation put out for community colleges to submit an application for the Strategic Enrollment Management Program. It's a year-long program where colleges will send a team. That team will learn together, but also have the opportunity to learn as part of that larger community of practice with other college teams around the state. We submitted an application, College of the Redwoods submitted an application last spring or spring of 2022, and we were one of 15 teams accepted to spend the year learning and building our strategic enrollment management project for College of the Redwoods. The team consists of cross-role and cross-area partners, and is listed for you there on the presentation slide. When the call for applications goes out, colleges are invited to think about several different areas that would fall under the larger umbrella of strategic enrollment management, recognizing that retention also falls within strategic enrollment management. So these are some of those broader areas that teams are invited to think about. As we considered what made sense for our College of the Redwoods team, we discussed several different ideas, formed our application, and narrowed down that funnel to really wanting to focus on student-centered outreach, onboarding, and enrollment. As we approached our initial launch for the project last June, when teams met in Irvine, California, we crystallized our idea and said that we really need to focus on our virtual orientation, our existing virtual orientation, as the place where we wanted to focus our attention and build the project. As we started to dig into that project of virtual orientation, we realized that although that is a specific area of focus, there's so many ways in which that question of improving our virtual orientation touches other cross-functional projects that are of interest and importance to us as well. Specifically, we started to also look at student-centered scheduling. And looking at our onboarding overall and how that aligns with and is supported by guided pathways, and with an eye towards editing and revising our advising and counseling pages as we made changes to our virtual orientation. Speaking of that virtual orientation, what you have in front of you on the slide here is our is what we started with. This was our existing virtual orientation before the strategic enrollment management team started to do its work. So we sat down and we looked at this and we said, okay, where do we begin? And we quickly discovered that we can't begin in a really informed and strategic manner if we don't start with our institutional research. We were going to need to learn more to be able to make informed and strategic choices. We looked at our team for strategic enrollment management and said, we cannot just consult with institutional research and be effective in this. Institutional research needs to be a partner all the way through this work. So we expanded our team to include one of our institutional researchers, Joe Hayes, and I will then turn this part over to Joe.
Hi, thank you, Board. Joe Hayes, Institutional Research. So we're looking at as Nicole mentioned, we're looking at the previous orientation page. Notice there are 6 steps on it. Step 1, step 2, step 3, 4, 5, 6. Each one of those is its own page. So our first question was, how many page hits are each of these steps getting? So for example, if step 1 has 100,000 page hits, how many does the final step have? So we sent a request to the webmaster, and he sent us back some data. Step 1 does indeed have 100,000 hits. Step 6 has 2,500. And these are just page hits, so we don't know that everyone who came to the first step came with the intention of going all the way to 6, but you look at even the ratio between step 2 and the final step, it's still a huge difference. 15,000 compared to 2,500 is big. So I think by the time we saw that, we were all pretty sure we were on the right track. And the next question was, how many orientation contacts? Yes.
Interrupt you, I think we have a trustee.
What was the time frame of that analysis of the traffic?
I think that was from the page's inception. I'm not sure exactly how long that page was so the next question was, how many students are we actually orienting and volume in the system? Week by week, month by month, year by year. So we put together, IR put together a dashboard to help us monitor that over time. And this is the annual trend line, starting from 2016 up until 2022 last year. You see it's generally downward sloping, zigzagging. 2020 may have been a nadir, the bottom out point. But still overall with the descending slope, it was another indication that I think we're on the right track. We picked something good to focus on here.
What constitutes an orientation contact? Exactly. Just onto that page? Just them clicking on the page, or is it like they've actually made contact with a staffer?
So they can make contact with a staffer and come in and for an appointment, or they can make it through the whole page to step 6, and then they how's it work from there? I think they receive an email. Staff receives an email notifying them that the student has completed it, and then they run that student's name or ID through a batch process that says officially oriented.
So these numbers represent those 2 scenarios?
Yes, looking back, yes. And then the final question, not the final question, but the final one that I'll talk about. We looked for a link between orientation and success metrics, student performance metrics. And there is a pretty strong link between students who receive orientation before the end of their first term and persistence rates, term-to-term persistence rates. You see in red is the trend line for students who received orientation before the end of their first term, as compared to everyone else who did not transfer, graduate, who was not a special admit student. The difference is significant every year. Students who received orientation for the end of their first term persist at high rates than students who do not. Statistically significant. It doesn't tell us that orientation is necessarily causing the higher persistence rates, but it is telling us that there's a significant difference here. You can see starting from 1920 on, the pandemic years, the gap has narrowed a little bit. Started out in 2017 to 18 as a 7% gap, starting in 2019-20, about 4% down to 3% in the most recent year. And finally, if you look at the cohort sizes, you can see the percentage of the number of students in each cohort. If you turn that into a percentage, you can look at the percent of enrolled students who did receive orientation before the end of their first term. In 2017-18, that was 25% of our enrolled students received orientation before the end of their first term. By 18-19, it was down to 22%, then 18%, 13%. Finally, last year, 11% of our students had received orientation. So sort of a nice indicator that it's something good to focus on. Now that we're monitoring this, we can move forward with intentionality and see what we can do with these trend lines. So I think the question after all of these data points was, what can we do immediately? And the student services did a lot of work with the orientation page. And Katrina's going to tell you about that. Thank you.
So we could tell that we were onto something, that even with the existing orientation that we were seeing was not working very well, it was still working better than no orientation at all. So we continued with our project of updating the orientation to something that would be more effective for our students, both to get more students through that orientation earlier on in their time at College of Redwoods, and also to give them more information and more effective information in that process as well. So we took this to orientation sort of 2.0 beta version, taking it from what we had existing to something that we could fix right away to get something better on the website as soon as possible, but knowing that this isn't the end of the project, that we wanted to make a fast fix and something that we can continue to look at and work with. So this is that newer version that we made some immediate edits to. There were some errors that were corrected. The biggest layout difference is that they no longer have to move through those 6 tabs. It's all on one page, so we're not losing them throughout that process. We also changed the language rather than apply and register and words that we use as staff to the words that students are using with us when they come to us. How do I talk to someone? How do I explore? How do I become a student? Where do I get my ID number? So we're using their language on this page. And we also started out with giving them the opportunity to seek help if they need help through this process, is right at the top. And then exploring. So not just getting into, okay, you're gonna apply, you're gonna register, you're gonna start classes, here's how to get into your tutorials. It's how can we help you? What are you looking to do? And let's explore that with you, including career pathways. So we have careers right in the beginning of that. And then we're walking them through the enrollment process so that the orientation doesn't just become this extra step that needs to be checked off for them, but it's actually guiding them through that enrollment process. So it walks them through how to apply, how to get their ID number, how to get into their student portal, register for classes, sign up for student services, and become part of the CR community. And I'll hand it over to Colin to talk about some of the anticipated challenges of it.
Thank you, Katrina. And so our team and Katrina in particular did a really terrific job on revising the orientation in the immediate and in the short term. But it's a Band-Aid, it's not a total fix, it's not the completion of the project. It was just where what needed the most attention immediately. And so we do want to do a complete new online orientation. And so we're really kind of presenting this project while we're still in the midst of building that and working on it. And so we do have some challenges that we've identified to bring this project to completion and to move forward. And so among those challenges, first off is tracking orientation completion, especially for specific groups. So the data that Joe presented earlier, you could see, we see there's a big issue. Obviously, there's a huge fall off of students who go to start the orientation or say, hey, I'm interested in going through that, but then actually make it to the end. What we don't necessarily know is why they're falling off or which students are falling off in those steps. So as we move forward, we want to make sure that we're tracking that and that we're building this in a way so that we can see where the pain points are and we can work to identify them for continual improvement. The platform limitations of what we're currently working with. So there's a lot we'd like to do that we can't do with just a single web page right now. So we'd like to have integrated video. We'd like to have data-rich analytics. We'd like to have something that can easily be updated, have ownership over the different groups who need to touch this orientation. So financial aid could come in potentially and update their information, different special programs, things like that. A lot of this information changes not only from year to year, but sometimes even month to month. And we want to make sure that there's a opportunity for that to stay up to date and relevant. And so we're working right now to try to identify the right platform to build the orientation we'd really like for students to have. And then lastly, as a challenge we see is just maintaining momentum. So what we didn't want to do is come in and make the orientation a little bit better, which we've done. I think it's actually a big improvement. But we want to make sure that we're taking this all the way and providing the best orientation that we can. But then, as you can see, this touches a lot of areas of the college. So we don't want to, there's not just a stopping point where we say, okay, it's fixed now and it's great. We need to continually work on this to improve it and to update it. And so we want to make sure that we're assigning ownership and allocating resources so that that can be done on an ongoing basis. And so how do we move forward? And so broadly, we've identified 3 things here, and you can see these sort of mirror the challenges that we just discussed. So looking at the whole digital front door is kind of the terminology we've chosen to use, not just to talk about the orientation, because we know that doesn't just exist in a vacuum, but we want to look at the whole experience of from when a student initially is interested in applying to the college and going through orientation all the way through. So what do they encounter? I mean, we could build the best online orientation, and if you can't find that easily from the web page, or a student can't easily get there once they're interested in attending the college, it's not going to be effective. So we're looking holistically at how a student experiences us, especially digitally. Committing to data-informed decision-making. So as we discussed, one of the first things we did in this project was say, well, what's the data we currently have? And that informed how we move forward, but we also learned there's a lot that we don't know. And so we want to make sure as we move forward with this project, we're not just building something that we like or that we think students want or we think is effective, but we're building with specific metrics in mind and how we're going to measure that so that we know that what we're doing is effective. And then lastly, cross-campus collaboration. So this does, when we widen the scope to digital front door, this does touch all kinds of processes and areas of the college. And so we want to make sure, again, that we're not just doing this in a silo, but that we're collaborating across campus with all the constituent groups to ensure that we are putting forward the best project that we can. And so those are kind of broadly the things we'd like to do moving forward. I'd like to hand it over to Vice President Morse to elaborate on kind of how we see that going.
Thank you very much. Excellent job, team. This team has been very forward thinking and brought these requests for how to move forward to cabinet. And in support of the endeavors, we will have an ongoing strategic enrollment management group who is focused on projects to help continue building that digital front door and building it out in a way that advances us to where the students are and for their initial contact with College of the Redwoods. As part of that, we want to also scale this to an interdependent process of onboarding. We see this as a potential piece that's part of a guided enrollment or a mindful matriculation process. So it's an excellent opportunity just to continue building on that community building, the contacts, and the interactions with students that we can also support persistence and retention. And lastly, one of the next big steps will be that 3 members of this team will take part in an AI strategies and practices certificate program for UC Berkeley. The whole focus and purpose of that team going through the program will be to look at if AI is a viable option for how we continue some of our work within student services in general, but specifically toward orientation and onboarding.
Are there any questions or comments? Trustee Kelly?
Thank you for putting this together. It's exciting to see that we're focused on it. When was the last time we systematically looked at SEM stuff at this college? Have we ever? Or has it always been kind of put together as we develop and evolve, you know, different processes?
This is not the first time. We did it the first time since I've been here. For how many years? 16, 17 years. We first started in 2008, where we actually took a look at every department and tried to track how a student would interact with every department at both Mendocino, then Del Norte at the time. We haven't really looked at it to this degree in several years, trying to incorporate more online, but also trying our best to incorporate AI. So this is the first time we've taken really close look at it again, because we're in a new era post-pandemic. So we don't really know how students interact with the institution now. So this is our way of trying to gather more data and how the institution becomes the master plan ancestor, become more nimble in how we attract students and keep them here.
Stay from, but I have other questions. We have time.
Trustee Madsen?
Thank you very much for the presentation. I think there's some really good frameworks for improving student experience. I appreciated, Katrina, your commenting how you're trying to use language that's more appealing to students instead of the language that works for the college. I think that's a great asset. I can't see the whole page on the little snapshot for the talk to someone, become a student, sign up for classes. Does that orientation piece or this the map, does it include housing options? Does it help students get oriented to the fact that they might be able to solve a housing problem by coming to CR?
Yeah, so one of the limitations of this first version is that the information that orientation alludes to has to be what's already existing on our website. So that's where we've started to look at, if we're trying to share this information, where do we direct them to? And then, oh, what do those pages look like and how effective are they? And so it is sort of branching out into these other areas. So yes, it does link to both our on and off campus housing pages of the website. But we did not make any additional modifications to those pages.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very well done. I certainly understand why this is virtual and you have a digital front door. Is there any option for a prospective student who does not have internet access or is not as computer savvy as someone else may be? If you do not have internet access, or if your internet access is shaky at best, what are the options, if any?
I can take that from the lab. You guys have done a wonderful job. So a couple of the options that are available, Trustee Murray, include a student coming into the Welcome Center and having an in-person on-the-spot orientation. They can also meet with an academic advisor or counselor, and it can be incorporated within that one-on-one session. We will be returning to in-person orientation, but we want to scale, we want to solidify this model to know exactly what must be in there to be fully effective. We will begin moving to that mindful matriculation in May, the end of May.
And I understand that 99.5% of the students are probably very, very savvy, and I will date myself here. But there was a time when there was a catalog available for a prospective student. I started in community college and, but again, I really date myself. Is there anything like that available? I mean, it sounds like the option is to physically come in and meet with somebody. Is there anything they can walk away with if they have to get to work or just want to look at?
We have lots of paper trust.
And I know it myself, but some of us actually like it. Even maybe some young.
Many of our academic counselors and advisors actually use a worksheet with students. Not only do they load their digital plan within Web Advisor into their student audit, third degree audit, but they also have a checklist or a worksheet that the student walks out with and a handwritten.
I'm sure if I cut up, Trustee Madden. So what's the definition of success here? Because I'm imagining like returning students might not necessarily want orientation. I mean, by the way, that numbers on the orientation webpage traffic was amazing. Like entrepreneurs will look for things like that to start businesses around, right? They go find where all the hits are going and they avoid that as a business. Seems like you guys are doing great getting people through the front door in terms of getting to the front door. But you know, an entrepreneur will look at those other ones and say, okay, there's room for a new business here, which it sounds like you guys are doing. But I guess what I'm wondering is what's the definition of success? You know, the retention numbers chart too didn't look like making too many changes to that front door is gonna make that big of a difference on that side, but maybe it's, you know, you gotta start somewhere. And so I guess I'm just really curious, what is the definition of success for improving the virtual orientation?
I think that's twofold, sir. I think one of the things that we're actually having students go through the orientation process and receive that floodgate of information and to have someone that they may have been in contact with as they go through that process. That's one definition. The other is that they persist from one term to the next. And then the other part of that is that's part of the construct of this group to continue strategizing, like what data do we need to be asking for and looking at to determine that definition of success? What's making them successful or what's hindering them from being successful? And does orientation have anything to do with it? And if so, where do we adjust?
Thank you.
Trustee Mathis, did you have anything?
I did, so, part of my thinking, there was a time, and many things were different. When at Del Norte, for instance, most students really had to go through orientation in order to register. And that was partly tied to, you know, side of the neck kind of thing. And partly it was tied to placement testing, which was a requirement at the time. And so you paired orientation with placement testing and the students had to go for the most part. So I don't know now for our website when a student just gets on the website. But I would think that having the orientation, and I don't even know if calling it orientation is the best thing, I don't know. But if there's something there that makes it quite clear you start here. Because students can do an application and register without going to orientation. And our goal is to have them go through orientation as part of that. So how do we, kind of grab them at that very first point in order to, that's where they start, rather than finding the online orientation someplace and going to look at a schedule and registering.
So, thank you for that question. I think it's excellent, and it's certainly one that this group has been grappling with, as well as the district-wide counselors and advisors. One aspect that we consider is the only incentive for students to go through orientation at this point is to gain access for priority registration. So access to preferred classes, particularly those classes that are in the bios and the chems or prereqs for STEM or nursing. Those aren't the only, but that's the primary incentive. Another aspect we were looking at is how do we do, and it is the platform build that we make something that can be done side by side during an academic advising session with a student in real time. And the answer is yes, in person, if we're doing it, and can we do it over Zoom? Can we do it over other digital platforms? Yes. I think the deeper question is how do we embed it within the script of what we're already doing to onboard a student? So, and the group has, similarly struggled with the naming of it as an orientation. Like it seems like that creates the barrier by naming it orientation, and it creates a step that they must accomplish in order to be granted access to something. So we are part of what the group is charged with, is looking at this from a more humanistic and a universal design element of like incept orientation into just our onboarding process. And I don't have the ready succinct answer for you yet. We're working on it.
Priority registration is a real benefit. So somehow people want to get your classes first.
Yes, the trustee, Johnny.
I just want to comment that I appreciate you including the cross-campus collaboration. Because I think many others on campus come in contact with students. They might be the first contact. I worked in creative arts, and sometimes people drove into campus that way, or you get a phone call, from somebody's been, sent to a different office, and it ends up in your office. And I think, more that campus-wide, we're educated on what's going on, or at least can refer students to someone else, or know where to refer them. It was valuable.
Trustee Madsen.
I don't know if you already have this piece in there, but something about, like student government, the MEC, the club system, like some way so that students can see themselves reflected, they can see ways to get connected would be a really powerful part of the orientation. Because I think when students feel welcome, then they are more likely to stick around. That's something that I thought Bert to suggest.
Trustee Kelly.
Okay, two final questions. So
We're just about. Time.
they'll be quick. So one is, does the system have any ability to know where an individual is in that 6-step process? And if not, can that happen? So that a counselor could log in as that student basically, and not to change things, but to see where they're at in the process and engage in other ways. And then the second question I have is, do the college readiness classes that we have integrate with any of this stuff?
So the first question as to where they are in process, no, we don't have a tracking mechanism with the Band-Aid orientation that we have. That is a plan for when we scale to the more permanent long-term solution. Second part, it is up to the instructors to include orientation as a mechanism within their course introduction or syllabi. GS does include orientation as a process, and they expand upon it over several modules.
Yeah, I'd like to conclude this presentation, and thank you your team. I really appreciate the presentation and the various components of it. Enrollment management has been a priority. This enrollment period has been a priority of the board, and to see such a systematic and thoughtful effort to, to improve our process, I think is much appreciated by the board. So thank you again for giving us this very detailed overview of the project.
Thank you.
Is the board okay with moving on, or does the board need a break? I know some of you have been here since noon. Are you okay with moving on? Yes. To the agenda, okay. We will go to our organization reports, and we'll start off with President James for the Academic Senate.
Thank you. Hello, trustees. And I promise to keep this update very brief. March is a light month for us due to spring break and Fifth Friday. And so we only had one Senate meeting since our last discussion together. But I do want to make sure the board is aware that some very important APs and curriculum discussions are underway that are related to the ethnic studies in Cal GETSE that we've talked about all year long. And as you remember, in the beginning of the year, it was one of our primary goals to make sure that these were in place in order for us in the fall to move forward on the timeline set forward by the state. And so I just wanted the board to know that we will be this Friday discussing the AP 4100, the degree and certificate graduation requirements as it relates to those items, and AP 4025, general education criteria and philosophy. Those both have been updated by the ASPC and now have reached the Senate for discussion. And our goal certainly is to have both go through the action process in May before faculty leave for summer. We're also going to have the curriculum committee come this Friday with updates on policy implications at that level in the Cal GETSE area. So it should be a really action-packed meeting this Friday around specifically those issues that we've been talking about all year long. So I'm happy to report the Senate feels comfortable with the pace of the progress to date. Also, and finally, we will elect a new vice president. And so the next time that we talk in May, which also will be my last time in the president role, I'll have the name of the new vice president to announce, and also introduce you to the new president in June, Diana Herrera, professor and current vice president Diana Herrera. So that's all I have for you today, but I welcome any questions.
Are there any questions for Professor Gaines? Seeing none, we'll thank him and move on to President Haggerty of CRFO, and here she is in person. Welcome.
Hello, it's good to see everybody. So a few things. So our contract is in place, and so that's really great. We do realize that the changes do mean work for other parts of the campus, and so we just want to kind of shout out to payroll that they've had to go through lots and do lots of work to kind of make up stuff for this year. So we have signed MOUs already also for our new contract. So one of them is for Pelican Bay, which is an area that we want to make sure that we have quite a long MOU for Pelican Bay. And as we work more and more with Pelican Bay, as they have more classes, I think some things are changing. So there were some modifications to the MOU, which can kind of help with the administration of the program to not put too much work on some of the staff working in the program too. So that's one of the MOUs. CRFO meets regularly. Every 2 weeks we meet with Chris and Deanna, the Senate President and Vice President. Recently, we've been talking a lot about the new faculty that will be welcoming to campus next year, and making sure that we have a welcoming environment, that all of us are working, all the faculty are working to, create an environment that is very welcoming and helpful for them as they're coming on campus. We have larger cohorts, I think, of new faculty than we've had for many years, so it's something that we all need to be thinking about. We're also looking and talking with them about our communication throughout campus and making sure that we're continuing to work on good communication throughout our different areas of campus. With COVID, maybe a lot of us are in different silos, and decreasing those silos and increasing the communication. CRFO meets regularly with President Flamer. Some of our regular meetings have not happened in the last month because of holidays, but he always reaches out to us when things come up, so that's pretty great. I'll tell you a little bit about, in the month of March, I traveled quite a bit to FAC events. We had a board meeting and then the big conference that is the Advocacy and Policy Conference in March. And so some of the things that I'm kind of tracking, the FAC right here talked about quite a bit in different statewide groups. The AB 1111, that Common Course Numbering Bill. I've heard a lot of talk about how community colleges are not going to be able to get everything in place by 2024, and that more guidance is going to be needed from the Chancellor's office with that. And so there's some advocacy in that area. Lots of talks about the budget. I was at a presentation by one of the vice chancellors, and then some advocates about the budget, and some areas that we're focused on is the taxes, that there's been an extension for property taxes, income taxes. And so the budget is not, they always talk about a May revise, and so now they're talking about there will be an August revise and most likely an October revise also because of these changes. But that the administration, California's governor's office, has made a real commitment to continuing funding for K-14. So hopefully, we're all in good shape. It's something that was mentioned in one of those sessions is Reforms to Cal Grant, and how some of our students throughout the state are suffering. And it was said, I'd never heard this before, that it's cheaper for students to go to UC Berkeley than to go to City College of Berkeley because of the way financial aid is. And with the current budget, some of the reforms to Cal Grant may be taken out. So it just seems like that's something that we should all really pay attention to in this process too. One thing that was mentioned, I think we all know, but when you hear it, it always really hits, that 1 in 5 of our California community college students throughout the state are homeless. That's 20% per student, that's quite a bit. And I know within our community, that's something we've really been focusing on quite a bit too, with the problems with housing. It was mentioned in a lot of the sessions, the importance of us advocating with our legislators and making phone calls. There were a lot of presentations from former aides in the legislators' offices, and they were the ones that would take the phone calls and take the messages. And they said how important it was that when these on certain issues, things would pile up, and then that would get the attention of the legislator. We did go into Assemblymember Wood's office at the end, the Advocacy and Policy Conference. There's a lot of students, and the focus is throughout the weekend that we have all these sessions, and then on Monday you go to meet with your legislators. Senator McGuire was meeting with, there was Women of the Year events, and so he was doing that. But we did meet with Wood's staffer, who I've met with before, It's really cool to see these young people also, a lot of them are coming out of the California Community College system and, you know, then they end up in these offices, so that's pretty cool. And so we talked with her about some of the issues that I've already mentioned, and then the part-time faculty healthcare money that's in the state budget and how colleges need a lot of direction to make sure that they're going to get reimbursement for that. And then Dr. Narvet presented, and she talked about this also, and there's more guidance on the Chancellor's Office website about that. So hopefully that's something that we can move forward with. It was also nice in the Friday event with the Chancellor, the Deputy Chancellor, to hear her talk about things that I did hear connections to in the meetings I was at in Sacramento. So the DEIA criteria and evaluations, that we need more guidance from the Chancellor's Office with that also, and that was something that she talked about too. So it was nice to kind of make all of these connections. And then I'll just say too that we would like our students and our faculty to be more involved in FAC. And it was just really fun to, you know, I think we appreciate things more maybe post-COVID too, to see people, but seeing a lot of the students, like I was in the bathroom at the beginning of the Advocacy and Policy Conference, and a lot of young students we're supposed to be business casual, is this business casual? And, you know, just really getting ready to be part of this event and having them talk to legislators that were there. And it was just really great to see that empowerment taking place then. So that's all I have. Any questions for me? Yeah, right.
I just wanted to ask, how many new faculty will be starting in the fall?
Posted at you, started to say maybe about 5. It depends on how the searches go. They're in process right now, but that would be around the number.
Okay.
And then last year, did we hire 14? That was the number that was first. Is that no, we didn't get, how many did we hire?
I don't remember.
It was 10 or 11 or 12. It was a chunk.
So these cohorts are bigger than we've had in the past.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we have President Heyman for classified.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to say welcome to our new employees that were on the board packet for today, and we're looking forward to having many future new opportunities and employees coming on board. There are a lot of hiring committees that are in process or starting process or finishing up. So I'm also really grateful to our classified staff that are serving not only on classified staff hiring committees, but committees for managers and even faculty at some point. It takes a lot of time sometimes to serve on those hiring committees, depending on applications that you have to review and whatnot, but it's a good process, and we're so grateful to be part of the hiring process. We've also been doing a little bit of negotiations. We'll be working on a sunshine proposal for reopeners for our contract. And then we've also been doing some negotiations surrounding public safety officers, one changing their actual name from public safety officer to campus safety officer. And then there's another lunch period item we've been negotiating as well. And classified staff will be needing to ratify and vote on those changes here in the next week. Just a quick reminder, I will be bringing you guys a resolution for Classified School Employees Week in May. So I'm going to send that out today so that it makes it in time for the May board meeting. And as CRFO President Haggerty mentioned, CSEA also meets with the president on a regular basis. And we also meet with the district and HR and Rory Johnson as part of problem solving. And we've been scheduling it every week. Sometimes it might not be sometimes it will not be every week. I'm sorry. But having it on the calendar and being able to talk about not necessarily problems, but things that are coming up, things that we've heard. It's a great way to keep it out in the open and not only have it once a month. And I also wanted to mention that we've had several of the classified staff going through training through CSEA, whether it's Know Your Rights training or Union Steward training. Their classified staff, they're going in there and getting the knowledge that they need to be better employees, better members, and able to assist other members as well. So that is it, unless you guys have any questions.
Any questions for the president? No. Well, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Move on to Management Council, President Sorensen.
Good afternoon. We had quite a full meeting last month, and I'd like to go over some of the highlights. We're still planning the CSEA Appreciation Week. We decided to call it Classified Professionals Appreciation this year, to take a look at the CSEA outfit, to let the temps know that they're invited, and also all of you were invited if you'd like to come. But that'll be on May 23rd and May 25th. So we'll be working towards that. We discussed the Fifth Friday Professional Development that we all ended up, a lot of us ended up attending last Friday. I believe it was over 40 participants from College of the Redwoods in attendance. So it was a good turnout. And it was a good workshop. Very interesting. We'll be calling for new officers real soon. So eventually you'll have Erica Harbour to give the work reports here after next month. We did a business office training through the business office. We did some training on how to make purchases and how to use credit cards. And that happened last week. And that was a really informative workshop. The business office puts it on every year, at least once a year. It's always really good to get some further information on that. What I want to talk about a little bit is my report from IT. Last month, I was able to attend the CISOA conference. That's the Chief Information Systems Officer Association conference. This year it was held in San Francisco. So I was able to take a couple of my staff members with me, and we drove down. It was a 4-day event. And the topic this year was Visions for Success and Digital Equity. So it really goes in line with what we're working with on campus here. The event, we meet with a lot of vendors. There are a lot of workshops. There are some after hours events. It's one of the most functional events that I've gone to consistently. I'm sure you can all relate to that. But some of the things they discussed there were because of the heightened threats of cybersecurity and how the colleges have to, it's really big business for companies to attack colleges. And I would even go so far as to say that in one of the last presentations, I think the 100,000 number is probably a lot of bullets. So I don't think all of those are real people. So I would look more at that 8,000 number, a little higher than that. Is probably where you're looking, not at 100,000, we're losing 92,000 of them, right? So I think a lot of that is probably bot attack. But and we see that coming all the time, and we have systems in place to block the majority of it, and we're continuing to get better. Because of all of this, and because cybersecurity is such a, it's considered the third largest economy in the world right now. So there's a lot of money in it. And it's not even it's not even always hackers doing it, it's people with money paying hackers to do it. So now we have hacking as a service, right? And there's a lot of companies out there, and that's their business model. You pay us $20,000 and we'll go after whoever you want us to go after for whatever reason. So again, it's big business. So a lot of the things that the Chancellor last brought up that they want to implement. One of the items, system-wide implementation of multi-factor authentication. That's where you have to use your phone to get into systems. You have the thing you know, which is your password, and the thing you have, which is your device. Endpoint detection, which would be like antivirus on the computers and on the servers. And a response plan for that. Local single sign-on. So when you're logging onto your local workstation, same kind of thing, it logs you into systems automatically. And privileged access management, which FAPE is a fancy way of saying that only the people that need to have access to certain systems get access to those systems. I'm happy to say that we've accomplished most of those tasks already. And this is what they want done by the end of December of 2023. The next thing would be system-wide implementation of vulnerability scanning. And we have, we've worked with a company, the Chancellor's Office has been really good at getting us some support for cybersecurity. And so we have a meeting in June. We did it a couple of years ago. We had somebody come on campus and do a vulnerability scanning of our network. And they did find some security holes, which we've patched over the last couple of years. And one of the things that was comforting to us was that they were already inside our network when they found those holes. It wasn't coming from the outside. So we're continuing to lock things up, and I'll continue on with that. But again, we've got another scheduled vulnerability scanning, so that'll come up in June. All districts are asked to progress on eliminating end-of-life systems. And what that means is a lot of, where a lot of this stuff comes from is emergency management systems. If anybody's, I'm sorry, energy management systems. If anyone's familiar with how boilers turn on and off in a building, or how the lights come on at certain times in the morning, well, these are all controlled by computers as well. And a lot of times, those are the most underprotected systems. And typically, a place will put those in when the place is built or built, and then they never touch it again. So we're working, and through UIR, we've been working on this and with a company, and we're working on making sure that all those systems are up to date. Some of the other end-of-life systems could include like, that I wrote down a couple other ones. This aging servers that can no longer get patches, and we've been doing a lot of work towards eliminating those. We still have a couple that we need to work on, but we've been making great strides. One of the next, an aging firewall, which we purchased, and we'll be implementing that in May. So again, we've been able to take money that we were awarded from the Chancellor's Office under Prop 98. Based on our need, we had to fill out several surveys over the last couple of, I guess it was over the last year. And because of that, at first we were awarded $50,000 to put towards security, and then we got in a second allotment of $200,000. So with that money, the majority of it we put towards the firewall, and with the rest of it, we're going to put towards some other things that were on our list of things we want to address. So again, it's nice that the Chancellor's Office is seeing this as a need and helping out schools that are that are underneath. One of the things we have coming up next week, we've already moved into Office 365, and the Chancellor's Office is paying for all the security on top of that. It's called the A5. It's the whole security suite that goes on top of that. And the Chancellor's Office is paying colleges to get on board and get that implemented. Many schools haven't been able to get there. They haven't even started the process. We're right at the end steps of that. So our next step toward the Chancellor's Office, and we started the conversation yesterday with an outside firm that will be building the Chancellor's Office, which is really nice. But they're going to do a security check on our install and make sure that we actually did everything correctly the way we were supposed to do it, or the way that they want it done. So that'll also happen over the next month. So now we've got our pieces in place, and now we'll have a third set of eyes on top of that to make sure that it all got. And if we miss some steps, there's additional funding through that to help us get over that hump. But again, the conversation I had with the company yesterday, they were really impressed with how far along we are, because a lot of schools haven't even started the implementation. And I don't blame the other schools. A lot of schools that had money earlier might have had other solutions, and so that's their struggle, is moving from their already predetermined solution to this new solution. When we started a couple of years ago, we didn't have a great solution in place, so we were able just to move forward. And so that helped out a lot. All districts mature information security training practices. We offer security training a couple times a year. We also have it through Keenan. There's some security options. That's something that we still need to work on a little bit, because that comes down to a local issue. We're hoping that the Chancellor's Office would have a way to maybe push that on colleges to make sure that everybody had that kind of training, but it really comes down to a local issue. So I think I'll need to work internally to see how we can support people taking the security trainings. And they're not very long. It's really easy to get this in checkbox with our insurance company. Statewide application Superglue, we've already done that. That provides secure two-way communications when students are applying for college. And then system-wide implementation of the course exchange, and that's the CDC OEI portion of it. And we're well on our way in that as well. So of all the bullet points, I'm pretty happy with the way the IT department and the IS department have been able to work together and knock most of those off of our list. And even the ones we haven't finished, listed here are progress, and we're certainly making progress on all of those, and we'll continue to do so. One of the other high points that came out of Scenic was, out of the CISLA was one of my technicians went to the Scenic presentation, and Scenic is the internet provider that provides internet services to the colleges. And I'll take a quick step back and say last week we worked with Scenic and we have now a 10 gigabit backbone to the college. It used to be 1 gigabit, but now it's 10 gigabit. That doesn't mean you're going to see that on your desktop, but that's just to our main data area. And as we improve equipment, then we'll be able to improve services all the way throughout campus. But as far as our backend systems and people being able to access the student records database and us being able to upload backups to get offsite storage, it's going to be a big help for that. And also improving like the wireless on campus, the backend service, which continues to improve. One of the places they mentioned was Hoopla, and they mentioned 2 places by name. One was in Mendocino County, and the other one was in Aquinas Trinity. And so they're still working on trying to get 1 gigabit connection up to Hoopla. And they're working through Acorn, which is an internet service provider up there. It's one we currently use at the site for our wireless communication. So hopefully they'll be able to work out whatever issues they have and get that moving pretty quick. Tomorrow I have a meeting with HSU, so I'm also working on the HSU side of things because they were at one point in the mix on this. So I'm just trying to find out what their portion on this is as well. And then again, with all the stuff we've done, we've been able to work with other colleges. We had meetings with Shasta College, Feather River reached out to us. So we're actually able now to answer questions for other colleges that are trying to make moves through all these steps that we've been able to navigate. And that's been rewarding for my staff too, to just be able to have those conversations and be reminded of the work they've done, because we don't always see it. We just kind of keep doing it and move on to the next thing and do it, move on to the next thing. So it's really nice to see that we're a little bit ahead finally of some of the other schools. Johanna, so I'm off of my IT speak now. Johanna was also mentioning that and I'm all that. Do you have any questions for me? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And thank you for your written report. You know, I really appreciate the written report and details that are there.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so anything else I missed, it's there, and I'm always happy to answer questions.
Okay. So I am going to call for a break now, a 5-minute break, and then we'll continue on with the agenda. into open session. Thank you for allowing us a little break. And we are ready for our student report.
Thank you, President Vivian. I appreciate it. I just had a couple things to add to my written report. This past weekend, our president, ASCR President Mason Kosky, and the director of the Multi-Ethnic and Cultural Center, the MEC, Dr. Kinte Johnson, traveled to Southern California for the Student Senate of California Community Colleges General Assembly. It's a big long title. It sounds like they had a wonderful trip and learned a lot. And Mason was elected as the regional legislative director for our area for next year. So we want to congratulate him in that role. And they approved several resolutions that are aiming to improve life for community college students in California. So I just want to say thank you to Mason for traveling and Kinte for traveling with him and representing CR at the General Assembly. There were over 400 student representatives present, I believe. Several colleges sent 5 or 6 members. We weren't able to recruit anyone else to lead class for that long at this time, but they had a great time. And then an update to one of my last items was traveling to Del Norte and specifically to Pelican Bay. ASCR went to the mid-semester celebration, and that was also mentioned in President Sorensen's report, and I think there's another, maybe Dr. Getch's report. We had a great time, so we're trying to get more connected across all campuses in the district. So we'll be hoping to go to Del Norte on April 12th. That's for a scholarship reception, an open house, and then also to help promote our elections, which are coming in. So we're very excited about that process. Does anyone have any questions about our work?
Yes, Trustee Dorn.
I just want to say I really appreciate your written report. I really thank you for it.
Oh, yeah, as the planner said, previous student trustees haven't been doing this practice, but I noticed a lot of the other folks in this section have written reports, and I thought I should have one too. So it's been a good practice, and it's also a legacy I can leave for the next student trustee to look back at the way that I approached it.
I wanted to say how much I enjoyed the information about the inner club council. That was, very informative. Thank you for including such details.
Yeah, that was our first inter-club council in about 6 or 7 years. So it's been a long time since the clubs have gotten together, and we're working on strengthening clubs. That's one of our priorities. And we still have a couple of club charters in the works for new clubs that are forming. And I'll report on those next week, the next one.
The diversity is very impressive, and it really shows the district is making an effort to be inclusive.
Yes.
All right, we are ready for our next set of reports. We will start with President Kramer.
Thank you. As the board knows, we have been engaged in a conversation around the topic of the future of learning. One of the conversations that Vice President Mayer and I had with Chris Gaines just last Friday, and Cabinet also started to engage in a conversation about AI technology. And I shared with them that there was some information in the Goldman Sachs article recently that said that AI technology will subvert or take about 300 million jobs worldwide. And that 27% of the educational sector, job-wise, both instruction, library, and classified staff, will be affected by AI technology. And that's just based on the technology that was just released last month. And we have new technology just being released by Microsoft, version 4, just this coming month, that'll put 3.0 to shame apparently. I've not seen it, but I know that the technology is overtaking our capacity to even understand the impact. So I know that I've asked my cabinet colleagues to actually give a lot of thought to how we can incorporate AI technology in our operations moving forward. Because if we don't do it, then our competitors, Microsoft, Google, are going to take the students that we so need. And may I answer any questions that the board may have?
Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to President Getchy.
Great, thank you. I'm hearing some recurring themes, as was already alluded to by President Haggerty and also by President Sorensen. Last week, we did have our Fifth Friday event where faculty and staff participated in a professional development opportunity. Interim Vice Chancellor Dr. Lizette Navarrete from the State Chancellor's Office presented on the future of learning. She engaged in discussions of the impact of AI, the statewide emphasis on dual enrollment, CSU, UC dual admissions processes that are coming our way, and the emphasis on short-term course offerings. So there was a lot of robust discussion and as was mentioned, a very good turnout. Relatedly, our CR deans and faculty are focusing their energy on meeting students where they're at via late start and short-term courses, some of which we'll see roll out in the fall schedule. So right now our deans and our faculty are working together on staff assignments and what that looks like for the fall schedule, where we can be a little bit more robust in terms of the flexibility and nimbleness of our course offerings. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Dr. Bitchy? Seeing none, we will move on to Vice President Morrison.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to add, I wanted to thank the board for approving the personnel action items. In that personal action, we had our new Director of Facilities and Planning, which I'm really excited. Leslie Marshall will be starting April 10th, so this coming Monday. Getting her up to speed as quickly as possible to get her up to date on our capital projects that we have going on, as well as our nearly finalized facilities master plan that will help her guide our future capital decision making. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Trustee Madsen.
Can you say anything about her background? Is that appropriate? Well, I can answer really brief that she's local. She's coming to us from Scotia. She worked for their community services department. Probably not getting that term correct, but their community services division is where she's coming from.
Thank you very much. Okay, Vice President Marks.
Thank you very much. So just one simple thing to add in addition to my written report, and that is a thank you for approving the personnel actions as well. We were able to hire and our new student services specialist too started in residence hall yesterday, Haley Cisneros. She transferred over to us from maintenance and custodial staff. She was assigned to the dorms already, so it's a really seamless integration into having a familiar face for our students in the dorms and additional support on hand. Are there any questions that I can address at this time?
Yeah. And now Vice President Miller. Oh, I'm sorry. Trustee Madsen.
I just wanted to thank you for noting that career exploration day. That looked like a really wonderful event. I was working and unable to attend, unfortunately, but seeing some of the pictures on Instagram and the social media was really nice to see students interacting with local hiring agencies. Thank you for organizing that.
Okay, Vice President Miller.
Thank you, President Big. And I also want to express my appreciation to President Flamer for asking me to serve on the Humboldt Workforce Coalition Board and the Humboldt Workforce Investment Board. You know, it's rare that you're thankful for being put on a committee. But I initially thought, well, I don't know, but I'm so grateful that I'm able to represent the district on those two bodies. Because as a result of those, as you see in my report, I was invited to go down to San Francisco with the coalition to visit the City Build facility, which was amazing. And it's just a very successful workforce training center that offers pre-apprenticeship training for primarily underrepresented folks in construction, technology, and the trades. Super successful, really great model. And as is often the case, the car ride there and back was super fruitful. So we had hours and hours to plan and scheme on how we might have something similar here. So that's where we're at now, just in conversations with not only Cal Poly, but Humboldt County Office of Education, College of the Redwoods, the Humboldt County Economic Development Board, the Job Center. So we're working on how we might take what we learned and try to operationalize something similar here. I was also able to connect through the Humboldt Workforce Coalition, again, with our partners at the Humboldt Transit Authority, who've been working on trying to secure funding to operationalize their transition to zero emission fleet vehicles, which is going to be mandated by law. So they're in the process of writing a couple of additional grants to secure money to make that transition. And part of the set aside in those grants is about $2 million for workforce preparation and employee training. And so they reached out to us to try to get some information about how we might be able to support that endeavor. So I drafted up some language for them that we included in the grant, and Dr. Plummer has submitted a letter of support for those grant proposals. So partnerships are strengthening kind of all along the line, and it's really been a lot of fun. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that work, and I'm happy to answer any questions about anything I'm looking for.
I have one question about the Center for Rural Policy. You mentioned the Senior Vice President secured the grant.
Yeah.
Is that you,
Yes.
Senior Vice President?
Yeah, so that was again, one of those things that came out from just like being in the conversation. And I believe the comment was made, well, you know, this money is supposed to, Cal Poly is supposed to do something with this money, but I can't get anybody to give me a proposal. And we said, we'll give you a proposal if you need one. And they said, sure. And I did. And they said, here's the money. So I worked with our social work human services faculty member on some project ideas and drafted the proposal, and it got funded. And I will be meeting with the donor who's out of San Francisco in the next month, I think. She wants to meet with me. So that's awesome.
Well, not only awesome, but this Indigenous Advisory Council and our commitment to diversity and inclusion. It's just right on target.
Yes.
So thank you for your work.
That's fun. Thank you.
Alrighty, we are ready for our Executive Director of the Foundation, Marty Quillo.
Good afternoon, trustees. I have a few additions to my report. We just closed the application period for the innovation grants, and we've received 11. Last time around we got 7, so there's been an increase. We had 4 academic submissions, 4 from staff, and that was a new category that we added for staff, and 3 economic. So we'll be reviewing those this month and determining who to award. Under use of fundraising software, outside of setting up event pages for the softball camp and the ATV Riders Court, we just also set up for women in welding. So they'll be having their event in May. Foundation's interviewed 2 new potential board members. We'll be having a special meeting probably the first week of May to vote on those 2 members. And just to answer an earlier question in today's session in regard to the foundation goals. So the foundation board set up 3 strategic goals. Establish the foundation's brand identity and relevancy in the community. Promote funding of scholarships, internships, and special projects. Facilitate partnerships, programs, and initiatives that focus on student enrollment and success, workforce and economic development, community health, and equitable opportunity. And then our quarterly foundation report takes all the actions and accomplishments and organizes them around those 3 goals. Questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Now we're ready to move on to item 8.1, approve a trustee request to place an item on a future agenda or direct staff to give a written report. Yes, President.
So with that, I don't think I need to make my request.
All right, next agenda item, 9.1, discussion of items to be discussed, disclosure of items to be discussed in closed session. And that item is 11.1, California School Employees Association, Chapter 509, grievance appeal and a hearing. Do we have any public comment regarding this closed session item? Seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session.